Imagine stumbling upon an abandoned town, hidden deep within the woods, where every step you take feels like you're being watched. Now imagine that this town is haunted by a ghost so vengeful that anyone who enters is never seen again. Welcome to Widow's Hollow, where the spirit of a scorned woman doesn't just seek revenge, she thirsts for blood. You're watching Terror Hub, where we bring you the most horrifying true stories from the darkest corners of the world. Tonight, we delve into the terrifying tale of Widow's Hollow, a place where the line between life and death is as thin as a whisper. Widow's Hollow was once a thriving mining town in the late 1800s, nestled deep within the Appalachian Mountains. The town was prosperous, but it harbored a dark secret. The town's founder, Samuel Groves, was a ruthless man who would stop at nothing to protect his fortune. And when his young wife, Margaret, caught the eye of another man, Samuel's wrath knew no bounds. Margaret was beautiful, with a kindness that drew people to her. But Samuel was possessive and violent, treating her more like a possession than a partner. Margaret endured years of abuse in silence. But everything changed when she met Jacob, a kind-hearted miner who worked in Samuel's mines. They fell in love in secret, sharing stolen moments in the woods far from Samuel's prying eyes. But secrets don't stay hidden for long in a small town. Samuel soon discovered the affair and flew into a murderous rage. On a cold winter's night, Samuel lured Jacob into the mines under the pretense of a work emergency. There, deep within the earth, Samuel confronted Jacob and brutally murdered him, leaving his body to rot in the darkness. But Samuel's cruelty didn't end there. He returned home to Margaret, his hands still stained with blood, and told her exactly what he had done. Margaret was devastated, her world shattered by the loss of the only person who had ever shown her kindness. But Samuel, ever the sadist, didn't allow her time to grieve. That same night, he dragged her to the edge of the town, to a place now known as Widow's Hollow, and tied her to a tree. There, in the freezing cold, he left her to die of exposure, her cries for help unheard by the townsfolk who dared not cross Samuel Groves. But Margaret didn't die quickly. She suffered for hours, her body succumbing to the cold and her heart broken by grief. And as the life drained from her, something darker took its place. Margaret swore vengeance, cursing Samuel and the town that had turned a blind eye to her suffering. With her dying breath, she vowed to make them all pay. It wasn't long before Widow's Hollow earned its name. The morning after Margaret's death, Samuel Groves was found dead in his bed, his throat slashed open as if by a wild animal. The town was in shock, but the terror was only beginning. Over the next few weeks, several other men who had been close to Samuel met gruesome ends. Some were found with their hearts ripped out. Others hanged from the trees in the same hollow where Margaret had died. The townspeople spoke of seeing a ghostly figure wandering the streets at night, her face twisted in anger, her hands dripping with blood. The townsfolk soon realized that Margaret's ghost was responsible for the deaths, her spirit driven by a bloodlust that couldn't be quenched. The once thriving town quickly emptied as people fled, desperate to escape the vengeful spirit that now haunted Widow's Hollow. But those who stayed behind, those too stubborn or too greedy to leave, were never seen again. The ghost of Margaret Groves became known as the Widow of the Hollow, a spirit so vengeful that her very presence was said to bring death. For years, the town remained abandoned, shrouded in fear and mystery. But every so often, brave or foolish souls would venture into the hollow, drawn by the stories of the bloodthirsty ghost. In the 1970s, a group of college students decided to investigate the legend of Widow's Hollow for themselves. They had heard the stories and were eager to prove them wrong. Armed with flashlights and a tape recorder, they made their way into the abandoned town, laughing off the warnings of the locals. But as night fell, their bravado began to fade. The town was eerily silent, the only sound the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. As they explored the hollow, they noticed that the air grew colder, their breath visible in the chill. Then they saw her, a ghostly figure standing at the edge of the woods, her white gown tattered, her eyes glowing with rage. One of the students, a young man named David, approached her, thinking it was a prank. But as he got closer, the figure disappeared, only to reappear behind him. The last thing his friends heard was his scream, a sound so filled with terror that it chilled them to the bone. David's body was never found, but his blood was. It was smeared on the trees, on the ground, and on the walls of the buildings they passed as they fled. The remaining students barely made it out of Widow's Hollow alive, their minds shattered by the horror they had witnessed. They spoke of seeing Margaret's ghost chasing them through the woods, her face twisted in a snarl, her hands reaching for them with bloodied fingers. The locals were unsurprised when the students returned, pale and traumatized. They had long since accepted that Widow's Hollow was a place best left undisturbed, a place where the dead refused to rest. In 2010, a paranormal investigation team entered Widow's Hollow, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. They set up cameras, EVP recorders, and motion sensors, determined to uncover the truth behind the legend. But the night was eerily quiet, and by dawn, they had recorded nothing of significance. Frustrated, they began to pack up, convinced that the stories were just that, stories. But as they reviewed the footage, they noticed something strange. In the background of one of the videos, they saw a figure, a woman in a tattered white gown, her face a mask of rage. She wasn't there when they were filming, but she was on the tape, watching them from the shadows. And then, just before the tape cut out, they heard it, a whisper, soft but clear. Leave. They didn't need to be told twice. The investigators fled the hollow, leaving their equipment behind. None of them ever returned, and Widow's Hollow remains abandoned to this day, a cursed place where the spirit of Margaret Groves still roams, her thirst for revenge as strong as ever. The story of Widow's Hollow is a chilling reminder that some spirits are not content to simply haunt, they kill. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, there's no denying the deadly legacy of Margaret Groves. Thank you for watching Terror Hub. If this story sent shivers down your spine, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-chilling tales. Have a terrifying story you want us to cover? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, stay spooky.